at the beginning of last year, I decided that I wanted to start doing live performances. So I started putting together a live performance rig that I could use when I do shows. And what resulted is this long line of equipment. Some of it I already had, some of it I had to buy. I realized after my show that I did last year, Fusion Fest, back in like September, I never really did a breakdown of what my setup actually is. So I decided that I would go ahead and do that now. So this right here is the brain of my entire live setup. This is where my laptop lives, and then my Ableton Push 2 as well, which is what I use to control what part of the set I'm in. In regards to the laptop, I just run everything off a hard drive so that I can save space, since it's only like 250 gigs, which is like nothing for music. Right next to my Mac is the Launch Control XL. And this is basically what I use for effects. So I can do reverbs, I can do delay, I can also do low pass and high pass filter. That's on these 3 knobs right here, and each of these are individual channels. This gives me the ability to also do beat repeat. So for example, I have the ability to jump through beat repeat sections, and I can also use the crossfaders so I can actually pull out stuff. So like if I want to put, I have the ability to do effects on individual tracks of the session because I have the songs that I've put together set up as stems where I have like vocals, music, bass, and then drums on separate channels, so I can add effects on those specific channels. We're gonna move across over here. Let's move the camera. My head's being cut off, but whatever. This right here is the SPD SX Pro. So this is a drum sampler. I have drumsticks right here, and I'm literally running this as a MIDI controller. So Ableton Live is basically controlling all the hardware in my setup. So this is actually just running off a drum rack that I have in Ableton Live. And then I'm basically just switching between like the different sections of the drum rack. Next to the SPD SX is my Machine MK3. This is something that I've had for years, and it was kind of just sitting in the corner for a while since I got the Ableton Push. So it's kind of not being utilized. But I really wanted to be able to do some finger drumming, and I don't like doing finger drumming on Ableton Push because the pads are so tiny. Same situation as the SPD-SX. It's running off a drum rack in Ableton Live, so I'm running this in MIDI mode. And then I have this mapped out where there are different pages within it. I also had effects like tape stop for each of the tracks up here. I could just push that button and I could do tape stop. I had a mute set up as well. Right here I have my mic, but yeah, that routes it back into the audio interface with everything else. And then the other thing, moving over here, this is actually what I used in the show. I didn't use this, but this is going to be used in future setups. This is the Keylab 61 by Arturia. It's a really cool keyboard. I bought it last year for the show because my Complete Control keyboard actually broke about a month or 2 before the show that I had. So I just need to replace it. It was just like one note, and I think it was like the E note, which is like used a lot in the first song of my live set that I was doing. So I needed to be able to like do that. This is also routed back into Ableton Live, so it can automatically change through sounds, whichever sound I need for whatever song. This will be doing the same thing in my future setups, but I'm also going to be using it for some other stuff, which I'll talk about in a later video. And then the last piece of musical equipment for my live setup is my bass. When you think about it, I make electronic music, so it doesn't really make sense that I'm playing live bass. I only used it for one song in my set. In future sets, I have some other songs that I'm going to be incorporating it into. I put some effects on it, also running through Ableton Live. That's all the musical hardware, and then there's a couple other pieces that I need to show you as well. So this right here is probably the second most important part of my entire live setup, and that is the Scarlett 18i20 audio interface. So it has, I think, 10 outs, I believe, but this is what I use to route audio everywhere. So here's a little bit of background about me. I've been doing live sound since I was like 12 years old. So I think about things from a audio, from a AV, like a front of house sound perspective. So I really spent time thinking through how I can make this as easy as possible for a front of house person to like control the mix. So my solution was use a multi-output audio interface and then use a snake, which I have that right here. I don't need it when I'm at home. But this snake is basically routed where I have it all labeled. So whoever's setting up, they can know which of these goes where. And then the other ends plug into the back of the interface. And that thing right beneath it, this is my in-ear monitoring system. I like in-ear monitors. It makes it easier for me to perform. It makes it easier for me to hear what I'm doing. And it makes it easy for me to play along to songs that might not have drums in every section, especially if I'm drumming, because it's very easy for me to get off because I'm not an actual drummer. I use some in-ear monitors. They're like $100. And I just route that into here. So I have this coming out of there. And then the nice thing is, because I'm using Ableton Live, I have control of the entire mix. So if I need more or less of any of these sounds in my performance, I can control that for myself. So I don't need to ask a front of house person on to give me more of anything. And I don't need to use stage monitors either, which is great for front of house because they just add a lot of noise to the mix. It makes it harder to get a clean mix. So this is my Ableton Live set that I use for my performance. This is probably the most complicated thing that I had to do for this entire live set, because the other stuff, like I said, I did front of house sound. So like a lot of the hardware stuff is pretty easy for me. This took a lot of thinking and routing. And I had a conversation with someone, and they actually told me, they suggested that I use something in Ableton Live called follow actions, which I had never actually heard of or used up till that point. Follow actions are basically a feature that Ableton Live has where at the end of one of these clips, it'll tell Ableton Live what to do next. So if I was to open one of these up, this one basically is going to repeat and then it's going to go to the next clip. So I have some of these tracks in here that are just complete and total silence. And that's because I don't need them for this specific section, but I need them to start so that it will start running through the sequence and knowing when I'm in any specific song. In the very first song in my live set, the follow actions were like used heavily. Basically, I can play through a little bit of it. And then you can see right here that this is just looping one bar over and over again, and then this is just counting up. So I think I had this doing it 11 times. No, 12. And then the vocal comes in. But the follow actions are basically allowing this to work its way all the way through the entire song. I actually like the setup because it gives me the ability to jump around a little bit and not have to think about things and know that it's just going to go to the next thing. I kind of imagine this kind of like a DJ set. And I kind of took this from Kalen Ellis. He kind of showed me some things with how he does his performance, and I adapted it to my specific setup, my specific performance. I imagined that I was basically DJing and I had 4 CDJs. Deck A, Deck B, and Deck C. And then Deck D is actually all the songs that I'm performing that have stems in them, so I can like control them over here and whatever. There's some times that I deviate from playing my own music, or I'm doing a remix and I'm playing that live and I put the acapella in Deck A and then like a splice loop in Deck B. Like that's kind of how I do like a Billie Eilish remix in my live set. Then you have the live vocals, so that's my microphone. And I had it set up that way primarily because I want to be able to hear my voice in the inner monitors. And then I was also toying with the idea of doing some vocal effects on my voice as well. I ended up not doing that for the show, but I might do that for future shows, just to be able to like create some kind of like aesthetic for some of the songs. This is the channel for the SPD-SX. And then I have a channel for the keys. And then next to that is the machine. So and then I have one channel for the bass, and the bass has a tuner so I can tune, and then it also has a guitar rig, which that's primarily because I don't have any effects pedals for guitars. Oh, I wanted to show you the drum racks. This is the SPD-SX setup. So I have different pages full of different sounds for different songs. This is all just running off of drum racks. And the reason that I used drum racks instead of running it off of this internally was, once again, so I could hear what I was doing in my in-ear monitors. And the other thing is Ableton Live runs really smooth with its own software, with its own plugins and hardware and VSTs and stuff like that. If you look through this session, I'm pretty sure the majority of what I'm using is all mostly stock plugins from Ableton Live, because it just makes the workload a little bit lighter. The only time I deviate from that is keys. Like, I use Serum for a lot of my sounds, so that's a deviation. For the effects, I'm using Kaylin Ellis's KFX plugin for the delay, reverb, and beat repeat, basically because it kind of functions like a SP404. I think my only adaptation was for the filter, because he made this before Ableton released the new auto filter plugin. So my one addition to this was using the DJ crossfader, or the DJ filter effect, in the newer auto filter plugin, which he didn't have that available when he made it. So I just kind of added that in and remapped stuff together. So yeah, that's my live setup. If you have any questions, drop them in the comments below. I'd love to answer any questions you have. If you want any of this gear, there's going to be a link in the description to each of these parts. It's an affiliate link too, just so you are aware if it is on Amazon. And yeah, if you like this kind of content, then definitely subscribe for more stuff coming out in the future. Anyways, I will catch you in the next one. See you later.